Few companies can boast a name as closely linked to the industry in which they operate as Boeing. Founded in 1916 by William Edward Boeing, the company soon achieved worldwide success, producing a large part of the seaplanes used by the U.S. Navy during the First World War. Despite the crisis caused by the surplus of military aircraft after the end of the war, Boeing managed to reinvent itself and stay on its feet. In the following decades, the company developed its first commercial aircraft, called the Boeing 247. At the same time, it continued to develop military aircraft, such as the B-29 Superfortress bomber, used during World War II and the Korean War. With the liquidity provided by military contracts, the company continued to invest heavily in commercial aviation. The pinnacle of this strategy can be considered the launch of the Boeing 747, the largest commercial airliner up to that time, and one that revolutionized the airline industry. Launched in the late 1960s, the acclaimed jumbo jet made Boeing the largest U.S. exporter and one of the largest aviation companies to date. What many people don't know is that the company is currently in crisis and has perhaps never been so close to bankruptcy in its more than 100-year history. But what mistakes have brought Boeing to the brink of an unprecedented crisis? What would be the consequences of a possible Boeing bankruptcy for the world economy? And is there really a risk of the company going bankrupt? If you want to know the answers, just watch this video, because today we're going to expand our global knowledge, starting with Boeing's crisis and future. In the decades following World War II, the civil aviation aircraft manufacturing sector was contested by several companies. In addition to Boeing itself, the US-based Lockheed and Douglas competed for the favor of the airlines. As this is a sector marked by many ups and downs and often hit hard by international crises, several companies gradually left the market. After a few decades, only Boeing and Airbus remained. Despite being great rivals, Airbus has always been a step behind Boeing. But that changed in 2010, when the European giant announced it would launch the A320neo, a new version of a narrow-body aircraft already consolidated in the market, but with more efficient engines, lower fuel consumption, and better aerodynamics, in addition to several other improvements. Airbus's new aircraft became an almost immediate success and earned the European manufacturer more than 1,000 standby orders in a short time. The competitor's success set off alarm bells at Boeing, and a few months later, Jim McNerney, then CEO of the company, announced the development of a new narrow-body aircraft. As it turned out, however, it was not an entirely new aircraft. The normal course, given the company's history, would have been for a new airplane to be designed completely from scratch. But Boeing management opted for a more economical route and decided to build a new version of its beloved 737 model. The new plane, dubbed the 737 MAX, was designed with an engine that was considerably larger than previous versions and consumed about 4% less fuel than its competitor. However, engineers found it difficult to accommodate a larger engine on the 737, which is a model known for having wings at a lower point in the fuselage. The solution adopted was to change the position of the engines on the wings, placing them slightly further forward. Although this solved the problem, it created another, which was the tendency of the aircraft to lift the nose when the engines were running at high power. Again, a solution had to be found, because this is a serious problem. In short, if the aircraft lifts its nose too much, the famous stall can occur, which is when the aircraft tilts up so much that it loses lift and starts to fall. To solve this problem without altering the airframe, Boeing decided to equip the aircraft with software that would recognize the problem and correct the aircraft's pitch automatically. Because the software was attempting to tilt the plane downward, engineers created a safety feature so pilots could disable the program if it prevented the plane from gaining altitude. All they had to do was pull back on the throttle to disable the program and start climbing again. Boeing was in such a rush to launch the new plane and regain market share that it exploited loopholes to get the U.S. aviation regulator to approve the aircraft. According to a report in the New Yorker magazine, the government agency in charge of approving aircraft in the United States delegated some of its functions to Boeing's own engineers. In other words, in practice, the company itself approved its new product. From a commercial standpoint, the strategy worked. and Boeing launched the 737 MAX in 2017 with more than 3,600 units ordered. But it wasn't long before all of the company's decisions proved to be a big mistake. Within months, several airlines were reporting problems with the jet, and pilots of different nationalities and experience levels had to make emergency landings all over the planet. Still, no one had realized the severity of the problem, and in 2017 alone, more than 130 units of the 737 MAX were delivered. Throughout the first year, these aircraft performed more than 41,000 flights and carried around 6.5 million passengers. It was not until October 29, 2018, that the world finally realized the severity of the 737 MAX's problems when a Lion airplane crashed in the Java Sea in Indonesia just 13 minutes after takeoff. The crash killed all 189 people on board and became the 737 disaster with the highest death toll at the time this video was recorded. But what exactly went wrong? During the investigation, Indonesian government agencies discovered that one of the 737 MAX's sensors was faulty, even though it had only been in use for 2 months. This sensor problem meant that when the captain attempted to raise the nose of the aircraft to gain altitude, the software understood this as a stall initiation and lowered the nose, causing the jet to descend. Although the software change allowed the pilot to override this command, something went wrong, and the computer acted even when the captain pulled the stick to raise the aircraft. In a real tug-of-war against the aircraft system, the pilots were unable to identify the source of the problem and got lost during the checklist, causing the aircraft to climb and descend as if it were on a roller coaster. Eventually, the pilots lost control of the 737 MAX, which crashed in the middle of the Java Sea. Something extremely similar happened a few months later, on March 10, 2019, in Ethiopia, when a flight with 157 people on board crashed just 6 minutes after takeoff, creating a large crater with the impact against the ground and taking everyone's lives. With these 2 accidents in a short space of time, the 737 MAX totaled 343 fatalities, alarming regulatory agencies. The 2 accidents in a short space of time led the Federal Aviation Administration, known by its acronym FAA, to launch an investigation into the company. What was subsequently discovered is that Boeing's problems began long before the 737 MAX project was launched. There is near consensus among aviation industry analysts that Boeing's problems began in 1996 when the company acquired McDonnell Douglas, one of its former competitors. In addition to paying a whopping $13 billion for a company on the verge of bankruptcy, Boeing brought in the competitor's entire board of directors and some of its assets. The decision was criticized even at the time by Boeing's own engineers. In a note, one of Boeing's chief engineers at the time, John Harth Smith, made clear his dissatisfaction with the direction the company was taking. According to John, Boeing's culture was changing, leaving engineers in the background and outsourcing much of the production. In John's own words, the company was giving up on quality control and thinking only about profit. As a result of this change, the 2 accidents occurred, and the 737 MAX flight license was suspended for a year and a half, which had a huge impact on the confidence of the general public, who refused to fly Boeing aircraft, something unheard of in aviation. In other words, the change in company culture may have had positive results, with a steady rise in the stock price for a while. But all this outsourcing of work and lack of quality control has led Boeing to the state it is in today, with a totally tarnished reputation. To be clear, the disregard for quality was such that, after the accidents, airlines around the world began to perform preventive maintenance and reported receiving airplanes with missing bolts. This whole situation caused investors to lose faith in Boeing, coming to a head when, in 2024, shortly after takeoff, an Alaska Airlines flight lost the plug on one of its emergency exits, causing the plug to fall out mid-flight and the plane to depressurize, resulting in several passengers losing their cell phones, which were sucked out. This was the missing nail in the coffin of the 737 MAX and Boeing, which became the subject of a criminal investigation by the US government. In addition, the company received a subpoena from the FAA, giving it 90 days to submit a plan to fix the flaws found in quality control. Obviously, this situation made investors even more fearful about the future of the company, which had already been depreciating since 2018, recording 6 years of losses and a devaluation of more than 30% after the incident with Alaska Airlines. Could this be the end of a century-long success story? Before answering, it is important to understand the impact something like this would have on the US and global economy. Anyone who believes that this is a Boeing executive problem and will not affect the lives of ordinary people could not be more wrong. The company is now so entrenched in global aviation that a bankruptcy would greatly increase the price of airline tickets around the world, simply as a matter of supply and demand. Without Boeing developing new spare parts, aircraft maintenance would become increasingly expensive, which in itself could easily triple the price of tickets within a few years. Along with this, there would be fewer planes available to carry the millions of passengers who need to fly every day, which would further inflate the price of airline tickets, again making this mode of transportation a habitat only for the very fortunate. There is also the layoff of many employees to consider at the same time. Boeing currently has more than 140,000 direct employees, not counting pilots and mechanics around the world, who are certified to work only with the company's jets. In fact, this is one of the main reasons why airlines do not leave Boeing and work only with Airbus. The cost of training these employees on a new aircraft virtually from scratch could easily run into billions of dollars worldwide. Impractical for most airlines, which do not have as large a profit margin as people imagine. One of the steps Boeing has already taken to prevent the crisis from worsening is to concentrate its efforts on minimizing damage by reducing max production and focusing on correcting problems with existing aircraft, ultimately prioritizing safety more and putting profits aside. In addition, the company's CEO has also publicly stated that it will not develop any new aircraft in the next 10 years. Some analysts believe that Boeing can recover from the crisis by selling its defense sector and investing these resources in commercial aviation. However, this solution is illogical, since Boeing's military branch is huge, and about 40% of its contracts come from the government. Another solution that has been considered is the possibility of nationalizing Boeing, something that would be even more difficult to achieve, given that the company is based in the United States and such a move could face strong resistance, both from the public and in Parliament. Regardless of the decision taken, the road for the company to recover the quality image it had until a few decades ago will not be easy. If you liked this video, you're sure to like this one. Thanks to all of you who have accompanied us this far. See you in the next video.